Welcome to our VirtuaLaw Legal Analysis series. In today's episode, we will discuss the meaning, application and sample case of Doctrine of Inverse Condemnation. Let's dive right into it. The doctrine of inverse condemnation is a legal principle that allows a property owner to sue the government for just compensation if the government's actions have substantially diminished the value of the property without actually taking it by eminent domain. Application. In the Philippines, the doctrine of inverse condemnation is recognized by the Supreme Court. The court has held that the government may be liable for inverse condemnation if its actions have 1. Taken the property's productive use. 2. Rendered the property useless. 3. Prevented the property from being used for its intended purpose, or 4. Substantially diminished the property's value. The doctrine of inverse condemnation is typically used in cases where the government's actions have imposed a regulatory taking on a property. A regulatory taking occurs when the government's regulations so severely restrict the use of a property that the property is effectively taken for public use, even though the government has not physically taken possession of the property. For example, a property owner might be able to sue the government for inverse condemnation if the government's owned the property so that it could no longer be used for its intended purpose. Or, a property owner might be able to sue the government for inverse condemnation if the government built a road that blocked access to the property. The doctrine of inverse condemnation can also be used in cases where the government's actions have caused physical damage to a property. For example, a property owner might be able to sue the government for inverse condemnation if the government's construction of a dam caused flooding that damaged the property. The burden of proof in an inverse condemnation case is on the property owner to show that the government's actions have substantially diminished the value of the property. The property owner must also show that the government's actions were unreasonable and arbitrary. If the property owner is successful in proving their case, the government will be liable to pay just compensation for the loss in the value of the property. Here are some of the uses of the doctrine of inverse condemnation in the Philippines. To recover just compensation for property that has been taken by the government without formal exercise of eminent domain. To recover just compensation for property that has been rendered unusable or less valuable due to government action. To challenge the government's right to use private property for a public purpose. Sample case. Makabangkit Sangkay v. National Power Corporation, GR number 165828, 2011. In this case, the Supreme Court held that the government was liable for inverse condemnation when it built underground tunnels on the property of the Makabangkit Sangkay family without their consent. The court found that the construction of the tunnels had substantially diminished the value of the property, and that the government had not provided the family with just compensation. The doctrine of inverse condemnation can be a powerful tool for property owners who have been harmed by the government's actions. However, it is important to note that the doctrine is not a guarantee of success. In order to succeed in an inverse condemnation case, the property owner must be able to prove that the government's actions have actually taken the property or have diminished its value. That's all for this episode. Stay tuned for more legal insights in our future episode. Remember, understanding landmark case helps us comprehend the intricacies of our legal system. See you next time. Like and subscribe.